All right, thank you. Actually, I was just heading out on a mountain bike ride this morning up Cache Creek, and Jonathan pulled me aside and told me I was going to be speaking here today, so we'll see how this goes. I have been here for a long time, and I'm going to talk from the perspective of being the CEO and president and executive director of Silicon Couloir, but also someone who's either been fortunate enough or stupid enough to be engaged in a whole bunch of different leadership activities around this valley over the last 30 plus years. I've been the CEO of the hospital, I've been the chair of the school board, I started a bunch of companies here. Jonathan alluded, for those of you that don't know, I was crazy enough to decide to run for US Congress and US Senate in Wyoming. Almost got there, but not quite. And there are no moral victories in politics. So I want to talk today, Jonathan, do I just hit enter to move things along? Right arrow, gotcha. So I want to talk today about what I want to call the elephants in the room. And to me, there are a whole bunch of sort of unspoken issues, dynamics that we need to deal with in this community and frankly in our nation if we want to be successful in making that change, if we want to change that status quo, as Marcia Kunstler so eloquently said. And also, as Susan Clark mentioned, if we really want to make a difference, we can do it. But I think we have to recognize what it takes to do that. So Jonathan talked about the Jackson-Teton County Comprehensive Plan. And I just wanted to show this next slide because it shows you, and I'm missing it here. Oh, Jonathan, we got it backwards. All right. I'm just going to go forward right there. So Silicon Couloir's mission statement is very similar to the Jackson County Comprehensive Plan first vision. And that is that everything that we do to support the private sector and entrepreneurship and a thriving middle class has to be done in the concept of community vision. We call it profit, people, planet. We know that private sector needs to be profitable, but we're not interested in helping organizations or entrepreneurs who want to become profitable and become wealthy on the backs of their people, on the backs of their community. We want them to give back, we want them to be engaged, we want them to take care of their people. We don't define what that means, that's up to them, but we want to know that philosophically they're going to be part of who we are right here. So why are we here? I just wanted to start with that because I think baseline matters, right? Are we here because for jobs, economic reasons? I would argue most of us didn't come here for that. Are we here for recreational lifestyle, like work-life balance? I think that's part of our decision-making process, is why are we here individually, and why do we want to be in this place that's such a special community? I don't have all those answers, but I want you guys to think about that, and everybody in this room and in positions to be able to make decisions to think about that as we move forward. So, what's the first elephant in the room? I call it the macro versus the micro. So we have two systems that are in tension with each other in a lot of different ways. And we don't always think of it that way, right? We have our governance system, which is representative democracy, and we have our economic system, which is free market capitalism. But that inherent tension is something that we need to find a way to reconcile. So I always use the example that capitalism, free market capitalism, is the best job-creating system that people have devised over the course of human history. However, that's at the macro level. If you look at the micro level, for many people, many companies, jobs are a bug in the system, not a feature. So if you look at the coal patch in northeastern Wyoming, coal companies, who've had a hard time lately, the last thing they want to do is hire more people. And the first thing they do when they get in trouble and they declare bankruptcy is they lay people off. And if they have the opportunity to do it while they're figuring out how to be successful, if they can do it better with technology and more efficiently without people, but with technology, they will. So there's this inherent tension in our society between job creation and the incentives that individual companies have to do that. And that's something I think we need to recognize as we're moving forward. Secondly, there's misplaced emphasis. This is one of my bugaboos, and I run an organization that supports the private sector. But there's a misplaced emphasis. And that is the macro is that the free market is all about increased efficiency and determining value. That's what the free market does. That's its job. It's amoral, it's aethical, right? But at the micro level, we have cultural values and priorities that we want to achieve, right? So if Jonathan came up to me this morning and offered to sell me some heroin, which you didn't, okay. And I decided that I wanted to purchase it, and we agreed on the value of that transaction. That's the free market at work, right? If I work for a large organization and I've got inside information that somebody wants, a competitor, and I agree to sell that to that person, and we agree on the value, that's the free market at work. But we outlaw bribery, we outlaw insider trading, we outlaw hard drugs because we think they're bad for society. So it's not about whether or not the free market can set our cultural priorities and the priorities of our community. It should be the other way around. And we need to resolve that inherent tension. Next, regulation matters. So I got this actually from Phil Hartle. And I'm going to misquote him and probably get him in trouble here, but why not? So Phil and I met and had lunch the first time I think we ever met, and he told me about his biological and his biosciences background. And we started talking about systems, and he mentioned to me that all systems have to be regulated, either internally or externally. Because if they're not regulated, whether they're biological systems or human-devised systems, they become toxic in some way, shape, or form. So for all these people that say, you know what, let's just let the market do its thing, the market is a tool, and it's one tool of many in our toolbox to help us succeed as a society. But if we don't oversee it, if we don't make sure that we have a level playing field and fair parameters and all those transparency, all the things that we should have, we're going to be in trouble. And in our community, it's no different. We need to make sure that we as a community have the strength to oversee the systems that are operating within our community. Elephant number 3, what and how we measure matters. I'm in the wrong slide. There we go. So we have a tendency, and I think that Sandy Schultz-Hessler, who's following me, will talk about this a little bit as well. But we have a tendency to want to measure quantitative things that are easy to figure out, right? Businesses want to measure increased sales year over year. They want to measure their gross margin changes year over year, whatever the case may be. But we don't like to measure qualitative things, quality of life, the environment, our health, all of those things that really are the basis for how we're going to be successful as humans and as a society. We tend to undermeasure and give short shrift. And I think actually leadership is one of those things as well. So Silicon Couloir is working on an educational leadership initiative, entrepreneurial leadership initiative, because leadership is not easy to quantify. It's qualitative. And so therefore it gets short shrift. And if you're going to be in an organization, if you don't have good leadership, you're not going to achieve your mission, you're not going to achieve your goals. So again, something we need to think about. And finally, well, maybe not finally, but elephant number 4, the decision-action mismatch, I call it. So in the community, our community action, right, it requires input, it requires compromise, it requires consensus. It's messy, it takes time, it's subject to money influence, it's subject to all sorts of different factors. But market action tends to be much quicker. It tends to be top-down, it tends to be decisions made by individuals or a small group of people, and they can take action very quickly. So while we're taking all of our time trying to figure out where we want our community to go, it's already gone there because the private sector has made decisions about what's going to happen. So we need to be cognizant of that, and again, we need to find a way, I don't know that I have the answer, we need to find a way to make sure that that mismatch, that imbalance, is something that we deal with. Elephant number 5. This came from my discussions with Jonathan, so I want to give him credit for this as well, but it's the private sector, stupid. There are 3 sectors in every community: public, private, nonprofit. Public is government. I wanted to be in government. I tried. I've run for office, and I've been there as a school board member. However, public entities tend to be reactive, not proactive. Frankly, politicians don't like losing their jobs. They don't want to stick their neck out. It's not easy for them to make decisions. It takes time. So generally, government is reactive, not proactive. The nonprofit sector fills the gaps. So you've got something where the public sector is not getting it done and the private sector is not getting it done. So maybe Joe and I decide that we have an interest in the arts or we have an interest in the environment. We're like, let's get together and let's start a nonprofit. Okay, and we're going to raise funds in a charitable way and have our mission, and we're going to move forward. So it fills the gaps. But at the end of the day, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is the private sector. I like to call it the straw. So I'm a Yankees fan. Go, Aaron Judge. Yes? Okay. 62 homers. I'm a Yankees fan. And back in my day when I was growing up, there was a player who played for the Yankees named Reggie Jackson. And you may remember him, Mr. October, big personality. And he was signed to the team by George Steinbrenner, the owner. And there was sort of the rock of the team was a guy named Thurman Munson, who was a catcher for the Yankees. He was an all-star. And their personalities did not mesh. And at one point during the 1977 season, Reggie gave an interview, and he basically said, "I am the straw that stirs the drink." Didn't go over very well in the clubhouse, but I think it relates to us here today. Because the private sector in our culture, in our society, is the straw that stirs the drink. The question for us is, how do we take that and turn it into something that can do well by doing good and do good by doing well, right? Private sector has to be profitable. Entrepreneurs want to be successful. We're all about that. But at the same time, if you're not doing good in your community, it's actually probably not good business, right? And we need to have a long-term focus on what the private sector does. Private sector tends to have a short-term focus, especially public companies, as Joe knows so well. So, you know, the private sector has the staying power. It's got the financial capital. It's got not all the intellectual capital, but it's got a lot of the intellectual capital as well. How can we use that for good at the same time that they're doing well financially? So we know where this is headed. And this goes to Jonathan's 250-year precedent, which I want to give him credit for. If we keep on the same path, the demand for real estate's always going to exceed supply. It's going to be, the free market has passed affordable real estate by in this valley. We know that. So if we keep going the way we're going, nothing's going to change. Tourism, right? If we keep the volume that we've got, we're going to kill the golden goose. You know, we've never had, I mean, I've been here for over 30 years, but traffic on 22 in the summer, whoever alluded to it, it's insane, right? If we keep going, it's just going to get worse. Development, clean air, clean water, septic tanks that are failing, whatever the case may be, if we stay on the same path, we're going to continue with that 250-year precedent where nothing's going to change. And, you know, I wanted to bring up Adam Smith because I just think it's important. There's this sort of misconception, that's for me, Jonathan, so don't take it. There's this misconception that Adam Smith was all about the invisible hand of the market, right? Wealth of Nations is what he wrote in 1776. But he actually wrote a book called The Theory of Moral Sentiments in 1759. And his whole take, I won't go into all the detail, was basically that you need to have moral grounding. You need to have ethical grounding. If you don't have that, you cannot have a viable capitalistic system, right? And again, I'm going to keep returning to this over and over and over again. The free market is one tool among many that we have to help us achieve our societal and economic goals. But it should not be the only tool. It should not be the end-all, be-all. And I'll use healthcare as an example because I was the CEO of the hospital for a while. If you want to fly to Europe, lots of people can fly to Europe coach, maybe once a year, maybe whatever. A small slice of people can fly any way they want, and first class, private, however they want, anytime they want. But there is still a large segment of people in this country that will never be able to afford to fly to Europe, ever. That's okay, because flying to Europe isn't really critical to people's lives. But if you take a look at healthcare, right, do we want a system where a fair amount of people can get decent care, a really small slice of people can get any kind of care they want anywhere, the best care in the world, but there's still a huge group of people that actually don't have proactive health care. They can't afford it in our system. They can't afford the insurance, they don't have insurance, whatever it might be. I don't think we want that. So again, I think we have to set our societal communal goals and have the market be one of the ways to help us get there. So I will end with, this is going to take creativity, it's going to take compromise, it's going to take consensus, but we absolutely need a different approach. The public sector needs to get creative, and people need to get involved. You're all here, but this room is not good enough. It needs to be everybody else. And in the private sector, again, what we're trying to do at Silicon Couloir, profit, people, planet. Do well by doing good, and do good by doing well. I think we've still got the opportunity to make this the example for what it can be like everywhere else in the world where they have free market societies. But we're going to have to work hard on it, and it's going to take concerted, determined, focused effort to get there. So thank you for listening to me. I hope this was insightful. And Sandy, you can add to what I have to say. Thank you.